In this class we want to talk about competition and to introduce the idea of competition. To do that we're going to look at different types of competitive situation, ranging from extreme competition, which we call perfect competition, through to monopoly, which is no competition. It's a single seller, hence there is no competition. So we're going to run from perfect competition right through to monopoly. Now before we start, it's worth noting here about perfect competition is that it probably doesn't exist. It's a way of thinking, it's a way of helping us to think about the extremes of competition. So we don't really go looking for examples of this. There may be some say the stock market or the financial markets approximate to perfect competition. But really the purpose of studying it is to give us an idea of what extreme competition would mean and what it would be based on and what would be the consequences of it. So when we talk about a market being competitive, it begs the question, how competitive? So if you let your imagination run right to the extreme, it would be perfect competition, which is the maximum amount of competition conceivable. And that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about what would be the implications of that. So that's the purpose of why we're doing this one. Now, normally we consider there to be pure competition and perfect competition. Pure competition is almost the same as perfect competition, except perfect competition assumes that everybody in the market has perfect information. So perfect information distinguishes pure and perfect competition. Now, as I said, it's only a simplification of reality. Don't get too worried because you can't see practical examples of it. But this is what the world would be like if we had extreme competition. So as I said, don't worry about the practical examples. Financial markets may be near approximation, but there again maybe not. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to understand how it works. Now, perfect competition is underpinned by assumptions, and we need to run through these assumptions. You'll be surprised at how unrealistic they are, but let's have a look at them and just make a note of them, because these assumptions are very important as underpinning for the model itself. This is the perfectly competitive model. There we go. That's a list of 6 assumptions, and they are not very realistic. But there again, this is not a very realistic model. It's a theoretical model telling us what competition would be like in the extreme. The first assumption is a large number of buyers and sellers. Sometimes this is called the atomistic market. There are so many buyers that each one is so small compared to the total. Atomistic. So many sellers, each seller is insignificant in comparison to the total. Again, atomistic. We very seldom fall across so many buyers and sellers. The second assumption is product homogeneity. All the products are assumed to be identical. Well, there are lots of forces in society trying to make products different. Marketing, for example, advertising. Products themselves change, style changes, fashion changes. So everything's changing around us, and yet this model is assuming product homogeneity. All products are identical. Next, we assume free mobility of the factors of production. We assume that people can instantaneously and without cost just move from one place to the next. Factories can open and close freely in one place or the next. There's free mobility, there's no obstacle to movement. So a very fluid society. Number 4, the absence of artificial restraints. There are no barriers to entry or exit. There's nothing stopping a company from setting up to produce something. So there are no legal restraints, no obstacles in terms of expert knowledge or shortages of capital, nothing like that. Just if you see a good idea and you want to open and produce it, it's possible. 5th is no transport cost. Again, not realistic because distance involves cost. When we move, it involves cost, time and effort. And the last assumption is perfect knowledge. We don't have perfect knowledge. We live in a world besought with ignorance of the market, ignorance of prices. We all suffer from it. We have small brains and we can't possibly assimilate all the prices in the market. So perfect competition is not very realistic, but it's useful as an underpinning. It'll start off our discussion of perfect competition, and in subsequent models we get rid of these assumptions and we get closer to what you would call the real world. Now, under perfect competition, given the assumptions I've just set out above, the firm faces a perfectly elastic demand curve. By that I mean perfectly elastic is a nice way of saying it's horizontal. So the demand curve is horizontal. Now, the reason it's horizontal is that if one of the firms increases the price by a fraction of a penny, it'll sell nothing. There's perfect information in the market, the products are homogeneous, there's no transport cost. So if one firm increases, if one shop even increases the price of the product by a fraction of a penny, it'll sell nothing. There's no loyalty in this market. If it cuts the price by a fraction of a penny, it'll have an infinite demand. Everybody will go to it. The upshot is the price is fixed. There's no variation in the price. One seller will not step out of line and increase the price or reduce the price. The price is the same for everybody. Now, we have to look at the total market and the individual market. I'm going to put the cursor on the screen, just a moment. There we go. If the demand and supply in the market is S1 and D, then the equilibrium price will be P1 and the quantity will be down here. Now, all the firms in the all the producers in the market will produce and sell at P1, and their total output will be this much here. All the producers sell at P1. If something happens, if there's a problem with raw materials, or the government cuts back on the production of the item, or whatever, something happens, the supply curve might move to the left. If it moves to the left, then there will be less demand in the market and the price will be higher. So the new equilibrium will be here, which means the existing price for each of the producers will have increased up to P. But that's the only way it can happen. The individual producer, him or herself, cannot arbitrarily increase the price. If they do, nobody will increase the price with them and they'll sell nothing. But if the whole market increases the price, all the producers increase the price to P, then that's possible. And that would only be possible if the conditions of supply here changed. Now I want to introduce two new concepts that many students find difficult. So the concept of average and marginal. Well, put the cursor back on. Here you are. Here's the first one. Marginal revenue is equal to this. This looks difficult. Well, the little triangle here is the Latin letter delta, and delta means change in. So it's equal to the change in total revenue, TR. So marginal revenue is equal to the change in total revenue divided by the change in delta quantity. Marginal revenue is the change in total revenue divided by the change in quantity. Average revenue is total revenue divided by quantity. It's different. This is the change in total revenue divided by the change in quantity. This is the total revenue divided by the quantity. And total revenue, of course, is just the price times the quantity. It's the amount you sell times the price you sell it at. That's the total revenue. So it's PQ, price times quantity sold, divided by Q, which of course is just P. So the average revenue is just the price. So average revenue is price. Okay. Now we can use these definitions, this new concept of marginal and average. We can use it. So we can, down here, let's have a look at it again. Here we've got marginal revenue is equal to the change in total revenue divided by the change in quantity, which is, for very small quantities, we change the delta here to D. Now, those of you who have done mathematics will see what I'm doing here. If you haven't done mathematics, just bear with me, and you don't need to know all of this, but what you will need to know is the relationship at the end. I'll indicate that to you, but for the moment I'm just trying to derive it to show where it comes from, so that everybody's clear that there is a proof and you can see where it comes from. So here is a discrete change. This is a measurable change in quantity in the revenue. This is a measurable change in quantity, one divided by the other. Here D means a very small change. A very small change. In mathematics this is known as the calculus. If we draw a demand curve, there's a demand curve, it'll have a slope, it'll have an intercept time. So its slope's at, say, minus B, and the intercept is at A. So average revenue is equal to A minus BQ. Average revenue is the price. A minus BQ, it slopes downwards. As I said, if you haven't done mathematics at this level, don't worry about it too much. We can, providing we know the relationship at the end, that's the important thing. Okay. Now, if we take average revenue to that, then the total revenue is P times Q. So it's AQ minus BQ squared. If you look back at the diagram, that's what we've done. If you take average revenue back here and multiply it by Q, you get AQ minus BQ squared. AQ minus BQ squared, multiplying all of this by Q. So now we've got that relationship. Now, the marginal revenue is the change in total revenue divided by the change in quantity, and this is where you have to believe what I'm doing is correct. If we differentiate that using the calculus in mathematics, we get this. Now, the marginal revenue can be compared with the average revenue. Well, they've got the same intercept term, the graph starts at the same point, but B is the slope and this one's got twice the slope, minus 2B. So average revenue, marginal revenue. Average revenue starts at the same point as marginal, but marginal has twice the slope. There it is. Excuse me. Now, if the demand curve is horizontal, it doesn't have a slope. There's no slope, it's horizontal. So average revenue will equal marginal revenue, which will equal the price. So if there's no slope, the marginal and the average curves are the same. So what we have now is the individual firm and the market. The individual firm is the average revenue, it's equal to the marginal revenue, equal to price, because it's the same, no slope, it's perfectly competitive. And that would be the market solution over there. That's the amount that we want to buy at that price, which determines what each of the producers in this market can sell at this point here. If the supply curve falls, let's say raw materials become cheaper, or there's a new change in technology which means production is cheaper, if that's the case, then the new equilibrium is here and the new demand curve is down here. So what we've got is rightward shift of the supply curve, leading to a different point here for the individual firm. So all the firms will produce at this lower price. Now if we consider an individual firm, consider its costs and revenue, well, average cost and marginal cost, now that will be explained to you in other classes, but that's the relationship we normally assume. We assume that the average cost diminishes as output increases, then the average cost increases when small firms or firms in total might experience an increase in costs as output expands. But the relationship between the marginal and the average is always this. The marginal always cuts the average at its minimum point. That's the minimum point of that curve there, so the marginal always cuts there. That's nothing to do with economics, that's just simple mathematics, just the relationship between marginals and averages. Now if we insert into that the average revenue, which is equal to the marginal revenue, which is equal to the price, because it's perfectly competitive, we've now got this relationship here. Now when that's the case, then marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost at that point. That of course is the point of profit maximization. That's dealt with in another class, which you should make sure you're familiar with. So we have profit maximization, marginal revenue equals marginal cost at that point. At the output level of Q1, the price could be P2, but in fact it's up here at P1. So there is excess profit. Excess profit. The companies are making a lot of profit here because they're way above their cost line. That's the cost line, and at this level of output, that's the costs. That's the revenues up here. So that area, that shaded area, is what we call excess profits. Now excess profits, given there's perfect knowledge in the market because of the assumptions, given it's easy to go in to produce, there's no obstacle to produce, no barriers to entry, and there's perfect mobility of the factors of production. People can move and machines can move very easily and set up production. If people know, if producers know there's excess profit, they will set up a business to try and get a part of this excess profit. There's an incentive for them to go into business. And what will happen is, as they go into business, the supply curve will start to shift. More and more producers, more and more supply, so the supply curve moves over to the right. And as it does, of course, the price will fall. So what we've got is this relationship here, and eventually what we'll have is that relationship. Now in that relationship, what we've got here is the profit maximizing positions is here. Marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue. Marginal revenue, don't forget, is the horizontal line. So profit maximization, but the company is also breaking even. So the company must profit maximize to break even. The company must be efficient to stay in business. If not, it loses. Now that's the reason why we consider profit maximization and perfect competition and all of these concepts. We need to find out what is the best, what's the best solution. And the best solution here seems to be that the price in the market is pushed down to the minimum level. It can't get lower than this, because if it was lower it wouldn't touch the average cost curve. So it can't get lower, and therefore we've got a situation where the firm has to profit maximize. The firm has to be efficient, has to be super efficient just to survive. So competition leads to efficiency. It leads to the lowest possible price. Those are the two outcomes that we need to bear in mind from all of the things I've said so far about perfect competition. Let's look at the points in favour of perfect competition. Well, each firm has to operate at peak efficiency. It has to. If it's not, it'll go under. if this firm here is not super efficient, if its costs are higher, then it will go out of business. It has to produce at that level. All resources are allocated in an optimum manner, so that if we reallocate resources somewhere, it wouldn't be as efficient. The market allocates the resources efficiently. That's the outcome of the analysis. The organization, the firm, the producer, they will operate at a level which exploits all the available economies. They will look around for every conceivable saving and produce using those savings. The industry just has no profits or losses. The industry breaks even. It makes just enough profit, what we call normal profit, to keep them in business. It doesn't make excess profit. It doesn't make supernormal profits or big levels of profit. It makes enough profit just to keep the businesses going, but really they have to work hard to be super efficient just to make that level of profit just necessary to keep them in. Anything less, and it wouldn't be worthwhile. It wouldn't be worth their time producing. So hence, of course, the consumers will receive the product at minimum cost. And there's no advertising because we've assumed a homogeneous good. All the goods are the same, so there's no wasted competition, or there's no time for advertising or slick marketing or anything of that nature, because the firms have to be competitive. They're working with the absolute lowest possible price, and they haven't got the resources to engage in wasteful advertising or wasteful campaigns. Now, what are the points against perfect competition? Well, the consumer has a homogeneous product. There's no choice in the marketplace. There's only one of this particular product. Now, we like different goods. We like different styles of goods, and we like the novelty of different things. So there is a problem here. The problem of consumers being dissatisfied with a monotonous choice. The same choice, take it or leave it, week in, week out. And also, since the firm doesn't generate profits, big profits, there can't be any research and development, so there'll be no new products in the future. So even though the firm is super efficient and we're getting the product as cheaply as possible, there won't be any new products in the future, because the companies can't afford to engage in research and development to make the products that we'd like to see in the future. Everything has to be designed, tested. There has to be experimentation and development and innovation, and there have perhaps teams of workers working on this. There won't be the resources to pay them, because each firm is being squeezed so much by this competitive model. There won't be any job security either. Each firm is just breaking even. If any of them slacken up on their efficiency, that'll lead to the company closes. The company will close, no job security, no employment would be lost. All because the company is operating in an extremely competitive market. So ask yourself, where do you want to work? For a very competitive firm, or a firm where there is excess, where you can get bonuses and perks? Or do you want to work for a super efficient company that supplies the product as cheaply as possible to the consumer? Big question. Let's summarize it. Perfect competition is the most efficient form of competition, and it's used really to compare other models of competition. We can use this to look at practical business situations and see how competitive they are, or what are the conditions that are stopping them from being competitive, or we can analyze it, we can use it for analysis. Under perfect competition, we pay the cheapest possible price, and of course the firms have to be the most efficient. However, there's no choice for us in the market. All the products are the same, and that's pretty boring. Finally, the workers are working in very stressful situations where they have to work very hard continuously, have to be super efficient just to survive. So as we can see, perfect competition as a model tells us what the extremes in competition would be, but it's a very tough model, it's a very harsh model. Nonetheless, it's the foundation upon which we build all of our competitive models, and it's necessary to know this one. This is at the starting point of our analysis of competition in economics. Right, that's it for this one. Thank you for watching.